The 70s were an era of fuel crises, wild visions, and designers bold enough to dream big. It was during this decade that some of the strangest, most futuristic supercars were created, machines so far ahead of their time that the world simply forgot about them. Wedge-shaped bodies straight out of sci-fi movies, experimental Wankel engines, prototypes built in small workshops, and concepts that never made it to production. In this video, we'll go back to a decade when imagination mattered more than spreadsheets, and the courage of designers was often greater than the budgets behind them. These are the forgotten supercars of the 70s, machines that were meant to change the automotive world, but disappeared almost as quickly as they appeared. In the late 1970s, a car appeared that looked like it had arrived from the future and delivered performance that embarrassed many supercars of its era. It was low, extremely fast, and wore the famous Mercedes star, yet it never entered production. This machine was the Mercedes-Benz CW 311, one of the most fascinating concept cars of the decade. Revealed in 1978, the futuristic coupe instantly captured the attention of journalists and automotive enthusiasts. For many people, it represented the ultimate dream of a Mercedes-branded supercar. Although the project never reached mass production, the CW 311 became a symbol of bold engineering and visionary design, showing what could happen when passion and innovation pushed the boundaries of traditional automotive development. The driving force behind the project was German engineer Eberhard Schultz, who had long dreamed of building his own high-performance sports car. The project was developed with support from the workshops of BB Auto, a company known for modifying vehicles from Mercedes-Benz. Schultz designed a machine that looked more like a racing prototype than a typical road car. Its extremely low profile, sharp body lines, and dramatic upward-opening doors gave it a striking and futuristic appearance. Even standing still, the CW 311 looked fast and aggressive, clearly inspired by the world of endurance racing and experimental supercars that defined the golden era of exotic automotive design. The car's construction was focused on achieving the best possible performance. The body was made from lightweight fiberglass, which helped keep the total weight to around 1,250 kilograms. Considering the powerful engine installed in the car, this was an impressive figure. Engineers also managed to achieve a nearly perfect weight distribution of 48% at the front and 52% at the rear. Such balance significantly improved stability and handling at high speeds. As a result, the CW 311 was not only visually spectacular, but also technically advanced, combining lightweight construction with careful engineering to deliver exceptional driving dynamics. The heart of the car was a powerful V8 engine derived from high-performance Mercedes models. Thanks to the combination of strong power output and relatively low weight, the CW 311 delivered remarkable performance figures. Acceleration from 0 to 100 kilometers per hour took just about 4.9 seconds. Even more impressive was the top speed, which reached nearly 320 kilometers per hour. At the time, even prestigious brands such as Ferrari, Lamborghini, Porsche, and Aston Martin did not have production models capable of matching such performance. The public debut of the CW 311 generated enormous excitement. The car was presented at the Frankfurt Motor Show, where it quickly became one of the most talked-about exhibits. Many observers believed that Mercedes should immediately put the car into production. However, the manufacturer from Stuttgart had no intention of turning the concept into a production model. Despite that decision, development work continued for some time at the BB workshops. During this period, the cockpit was further refined and upgraded with more advanced electronics, demonstrating how the car could evolve into an even more sophisticated high-performance machine. The CW 311 also gained fame outside the automotive world. In 1980, it appeared in the movie Car Napping, where it played the role of an exotic dream car. Several scenes were filmed at the Salzburg Ring circuit, and during testing the car was even driven by legendary Formula One champion Niki Lauda. These appearances helped the CW311 reach an even wider audience and strengthened its reputation as a futuristic supercar that many enthusiasts wished had become reality. Although the original concept never entered production, its story did not end there. A few years later, Eberhard Schultz founded his own company, Isdera. Using the CW311 as inspiration, he developed a new car called the Isdera Imperator 108i. This model retained the futuristic styling and Mercedes-based engineering of the earlier prototype, and eventually reached limited production. Around 30 Imperator cars were built over several years. Meanwhile, the original CW311 gradually disappeared from public view, and its current whereabouts remain unknown. Even so, the legend of this extraordinary concept continues to fascinate car enthusiasts around the world. In 1978, at a Japanese motor show, a car appeared that looked as if it had arrived straight from the future. The Doom Zero. Low, aggressive, with a fiberglass body and distinctive gull-wing doors, it immediately captivated the audience. Powered by Nissan's L28 engine, with a displacement of 2.8 liters and an output of 142 horsepower, the model heralded a new era of Japanese sports car design. Despite the crowd's enthusiasm, the creator's dreams quickly collided with reality. Restrictive homologation regulations in Japan prevented the car from entering the market. The Doom Zero project began in 1975 in Kyoto. Minoru Hayashi, a young race car constructor, gathered a group of engineers he had met throughout his motorsport career to create a sports car for everyday road users. Their goal was to combine the performance of a race car with the practicality of a road-going vehicle. The team worked on a steel monocoque chassis and a fiberglass body that blended simple geometric surfaces with a modern, aggressive look. The result was a machine that was not only fast, but also visually striking. The Doom Zero stood out with its bold, futuristic design. Flat body panels, a low profile, and gull-wing doors made the car resemble a movie prototype. Retractable headlights were also added, emphasizing its sporty character. Such solutions in 1978 were almost experimental. Most manufacturers still favored classic shapes and conventional doors. The Doom Zero looked like a manifesto of creativity and ambition from Japanese engineers, proving that the land of the rising sun could compete with European legends of sports cars. The creator's joy quickly turned into frustration. The Doom Zero failed to pass the homologation process in Japan. Safety regulations were too restrictive for such an experimental construction. Despite positive reactions from the public and the media, the car could not go on sale. Attempts to secure homologation in the United States were also unsuccessful. Even when facing global markets, Hayashi's dream of building a road car for true enthusiasts remained out of reach. In 1979, a version called the Doom Zero P2 was created with European and American markets in mind. The changes included, among other things, larger bumpers and minor styling revisions to comply with local safety standards. The car was tested at several industry events, earning positive reviews from journalists and automotive enthusiasts. Nevertheless, the project was ultimately shelved, and Doom shifted its focus to race cars, including the Zero RL prototype powered by Cosworth engines. The Zero P2 became a symbol of potential that was never fully realized. After the homologation setbacks, Doom redirected its efforts toward motorsport. The Zero RL prototype was developed and entered in endurance races, although it did not achieve significant success. The company, rooted in childhood dreams of building sports cars, began to build its reputation in racing, expanding its engineering expertise that would later be applied to other projects. Doom became a symbol of Japanese technical innovation, even if the road-going Zero never left the showroom floor. Although the Doom Zero never reached mass production, its popularity in Japan was immense. The car appeared repeatedly in television programs and automotive publications. As a miniature toy, It found its way into thousands of children's bedrooms, inspiring future drivers, engineers, and tuners. The Zero became a symbol of creativity and ambition, proof that even a project rejected by the system can inspire generations. Today, the Doom Zero lives on mainly in memory and in virtual worlds, including the Gran Turismo game series, where its futuristic silhouette continues to fascinate new generations of players. The car remains an example of courage in design and perseverance in pursuing dreams. Although it never became a mass-produced product, its influence on Japanese car culture and the imagination of young enthusiasts is undeniable. The Doom Zero proved that sometimes the greatest achievements are measured not by sales success, but by the inspiration visionary projects leave behind. The story of the Mazda RX500 begins with a bold question. What if the future of performance could spin at 15,000 revolutions per minute? In 1970, to celebrate its 50th anniversary, Mazda unveiled a radical concept that looked more like a spacecraft than a road car. Low, wide, and dramatically futuristic, the RX500 was not just a design study. It was a declaration of technological ambition, proof that a relatively young Japanese manufacturer could challenge the world with innovation, courage, and rotary power at its core. Mazda's roots stretch back to 1920, when the company operated as Toyo Kogyo, a machine tool manufacturer in Hiroshima. It entered car production seriously only in the 1960s, adopting the name inspired by Ahura Mazda, the deity of wisdom and harmony. Soon after, Mazda joined a small group of manufacturers fascinated by the rotary engine concept developed by Felix Wankel and initially commercialized by NSU Motorenwerke. While others hesitated, Mazda committed deeply to refining and perfecting the unconventional power plant. In 1963, NSU introduced the first production car with a rotary engine. Mazda followed 4 years later with the Cosmo Sport, proving that Wankel technology could be reliable and thrilling. By 1970, as Italian wedge-shaped styling influenced global trends, Mazda decided to combine sharp, geometric design with advanced engineering. The result was the RX500, a two-seat mid-engined coupe with dramatic upward-opening doors and proportions that captured the optimism of the space age. The body of the RX500 was constructed entirely from plastic composites, keeping total weight to just 850 kilograms. Its lightweight structure enhanced performance and emphasized efficiency, a philosophy that would define many future Mazdas. One of its most unusual features was the rear lighting system. The taillights changed color depending on driving conditions: green during acceleration, yellow at constant speed, and red under braking. It was an early experiment in visual communication between car and surroundings. At the heart of the RX500 was a 491 cubic centimeter rotary engine, producing nearly 250 horsepower. Remarkably, it could rev to 15,000 revolutions per minute, an astonishing figure even by modern standards. During official testing, the concept reached a top speed of 240 kilometers per hour. These numbers were extraordinary for a lightweight show car and demonstrated Mazda's confidence in rotary technology as a serious high-performance solution. Unlike many concept cars, the RX500 was not hidden away after its debut. It toured exhibitions throughout Japan and changed colors multiple times, appearing in yellow, green, and silver, giving the impression that several examples existed. However, during a detailed restoration completed in 2008, it was discovered that the different shades were simply layers of paint. There has always been only one RX500, making it even more unique in automotive history. Since its restoration, the RX500 has continued to captivate audiences. It reappeared at the Tokyo Motor Show in 2009 and traveled to the United Kingdom in 2014 for the prestigious Goodwood Festival of Speed. Today, the Mazda RX500 stands as a symbol of daring imagination and rotary passion, a reminder that innovation often comes from those bold enough to defy convention and spin toward the future at full throttle. Imagine building your own supercar in the 70s, using parts from Alfa Romeo, Ferrari, and Jaguar, not in a large factory, but as a personal dream project. That is exactly how the Marciano 268A was born. Created by Italian engineer Vincenzo Marciano, the car became one of the most unusual one-off sports machines ever built. Inspired by the golden age of Italian performance cars, Marciano wanted to design something that looked like a racing prototype, but could still function as a road-going coupe. The result was a sleek, low two-seat machine that visually echoed legendary Italian sports cars of the era. Although it resembled the famous Alfa Romeo 33 Stradale, the Marciano 268A was actually a completely independent construction, built almost entirely from scratch and assembled with components from several manufacturers. It represented the creativity and determination of a single passionate engineer. Even decades later, the car remains one of the most fascinating forgotten projects in the history of Italian automotive engineering. The man behind the project, Vincenzo Marciano, belonged to a generation that witnessed the explosive growth of Italian sports cars during the late 60s and early 70s. It was the era when cars like the Lamborghini Miura and the Ferrari 365 GTB4 Daytona dominated automotive dreams, while brands such as Maserati and De Tomaso were producing increasingly exotic machines. Marciano had worked in several companies connected to the automotive industry, and even learned from renowned engineer Giotto Bizzarini. Despite his experience, owning one of those legendary cars was far beyond his financial reach. Instead of simply admiring them from afar, he decided to create his own sports car. In 1972, he began the ambitious project that would eventually become the Marciano 268A, combining his engineering knowledge with the influence of the most iconic Italian performance cars of the period. The project started in an unusual way. Marciano acquired a heavily damaged Alfa Romeo Montreal that had been almost completely destroyed. The only major component that could be saved was its powerful V8 engine. Rather than restoring the original car, Marciano used the engine as the foundation for an entirely new design. Around it, he constructed a lightweight tubular frame made from chromoly steel, creating a strong yet extremely light structure. The body was then formed from aluminum panels shaped by hand. The final silhouette was elegant and aerodynamic, clearly inspired by Italian racing cars of the era. The long front, compact cabin, and flowing rear gave the car the proportions of a pure sports prototype. What started as the remains of a crashed production coupe slowly transformed into something entirely different. A unique, high-performance machine built according to the personal vision of its creator. One of the most fascinating aspects of the Marciano 268A was the mixture of components taken from various legendary cars. Marciano used parts from different manufacturers to achieve the performance and appearance he wanted. The windshield came from the iconic Ferrari 250 LM, while the distinctive headlights were borrowed from the famous Ferrari 250 GTO. Even the wheels referenced Italian racing heritage, coming from the remarkable Alfa Romeo 33 Stradale. Not everything, however, was Italian. For the rear suspension, Marciano used components from the Jaguar E-Type, known for its advanced independent suspension system. By combining elements from different cars, he created a machine that was both familiar and completely unique. This unusual mixture of engineering solutions perfectly reflected the experimental spirit of independent car builders during the golden age of sports car development. At the heart of the Marciano was its V8 engine derived from the Alfa Romeo Montreal. Marciano significantly modified the engine to improve its performance. Instead of the original fuel injection system, he installed 4 Weber carburetors and added new mechanical components to increase reliability on the track. The engine featured 2 valves per cylinder and a dry sump lubrication system, a solution typically used in racing cars to ensure proper oil flow during high-speed cornering. With an output of around 230 horsepower and a total vehicle weight of only about 810 kilograms, the car promised impressive performance. Estimates suggested that it could accelerate from 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in roughly 6 seconds and reach a top speed exceeding 240 kilometers per hour. For a privately built machine created in a small workshop, these numbers were remarkably competitive. Despite the ambitious design, the project turned out to be far more difficult than Marciano initially expected. Building a completely new car without the resources of a major manufacturer required enormous time and effort. As a result, the 268A remained unfinished for many years. The partially completed vehicle spent the late 70s and much of the 80s hidden away, waiting for the moment when work could finally continue. Only decades later, in the late 90s, was the project finally completed. At that time, the car also received its official name, Marciano 268A. The designation referred directly to the engine configuration, 2.6 liters, 8 cylinders, and A for anterior, meaning the front-mounted layout. When the finished car was eventually presented to the public, it appeared during celebrations marking the centenary of Alfa Romeo, giving enthusiasts a rare glimpse of this extraordinary creation. Today, the Marciano 268A remains a true automotive curiosity. Only a single example was ever built, making it one of the rarest Italian sports cars ever created. Yet its value does not come from rarity alone. The car represents something deeper, the passion and determination of an individual who refused to let his dream remain only a dream. Instead of simply admiring famous machines like the Lamborghini Countach or other legendary exotics, Marciano decided to build his own interpretation of a perfect sports car. The result was a handcrafted coupe that blended engineering creativity with inspiration from some of the greatest Italian automobiles. Even though the 268A never reached mass production, it stands as a symbol of what can be achieved through dedication and imagination. In the world of automotive history, it remains a hidden masterpiece, created far away from the spotlight. When the Marcos Mantis debuted in 1971, many people could hardly believe what they were seeing. Was this really the bold new chapter for a brand known for lightweight, raw two-seaters? Instead of admiration, there was confusion and even ridicule. Some said it looked like a patient abandoned halfway through cosmetic surgery, and yet the Mantis was meant to conquer new markets, attract fresh customers, and elevate the company to a higher league. The opposite happened. The experiment cost Marcos its reputation, its financial stability, and the trust of loyal enthusiasts. The Marcos brand, founded by Jem Marsh and Frank Costin, had built its name on lightweight sports cars. The Mantis became its first large 4-seat coupe capable of carrying 4 adults in genuine comfort. It arrived at a time when the British car industry was struggling and foreign competition was growing stronger. The design is credited to Dennis Adams, though much of the original sharpness was lost in the transition to production. Its wedge-shaped body, bulging headlights, and heavy pillars created a look that some considered futuristic, while others found simply awkward. Under the bonnet sat a straight-six engine with a capacity of 2.5 liters. Early plans involved a Ford unit, while production cars commonly used Triumph mechanicals, with around 150 horsepower pushing a car weighing just over 1,000 kilograms. The figures appeared respectable. The Mantis could reach 60 miles per hour in roughly 8.5 seconds and continue to a top speed of just over 200 kilometers per hour. On paper, it seemed genuinely promising. In reality, however, the driving experience told a different story. The Mantis had a tendency toward oversteer and could feel unpredictable at higher speeds. Its tubular space frame and fiberglass body did not deliver the refinement buyers expected from a grand tourer. Build quality was also inconsistent. Interior components were known to loosen during spirited driving. At a time of fuel crisis, relatively high consumption combined with a price of more than £3,000 discouraged many potential customers. The result was stark. Only 32 examples were produced. For Marcos, this was a financial blow that contributed to serious difficulties and eventual restructuring. Instead of opening doors to international markets, the Mantis became a symbol of overambition. What was intended to transform the company into a refined grand touring manufacturer instead marked one of the most turbulent chapters in its history. Alongside the road car, Marcos also developed the racing variant known as the Marcos Mantis XP. Far more extreme in concept, it initially featured a mid-mounted Formula One V8 engine, and later a 3.5-liter Buick V8. The car was intended to compete in the 24-hour race at Le Mans, but technical problems during its appearance at Spa prevented those ambitions from becoming reality. Today, the Marcos Mantis divides opinion. Some view it as a styling misstep. Others see it as a brave British attempt to challenge exotic four-seat grand tourers, such as the Lamborghini Espada. Regardless of perspective, the Mantis remains one of the rarest and most controversial British cars of its era, a story of ambition that reached beyond the limits of a small but remarkably characterful manufacturer. When people think of Ferrari in the 1970s, they picture flowing Berlinettas from Maranello. Yet in 1976, something radically different appeared: the futuristic angular Ferrari 308 GT Rainbow. It looked more like a design study from another planet than a traditional Italian sports car. Created not by Pininfarina, but by the legendary Italian design house Bertone, the Rainbow was shaped by the bold imagination of Marcello Gandini. It was an experimental reinterpretation of the 308 platform, blending sharp geometry with advanced engineering in a way few expected from Ferrari. Marcello Gandini was already famous for his groundbreaking Lamborghini designs, yet his collaboration with Ferrari was limited. His only production, Ferrari, was the Dino 308 GT4 of 1973, also styled at Bertone. The Rainbow evolved from that foundation, but pushed the concept much further. It debuted at the Turin Motor Show in November 1976, immediately drawing attention with its crisp lines and compact proportions. Unlike the softer curves typical of Ferrari at the time, the Rainbow embraced a sharp wedge profile that reflected Gandini's unmistakable design language. The car was based on the 308 GT4 chassis, but featured a shortened wheelbase, reduced from 255 to 245 centimeters. Its compact, two-seat layout emphasized agility and visual tension. The most innovative feature was its manually removable hardtop roof, which could be stored behind the seats. Decades before modern retractable hardtop systems, this solution offered open-air driving in a remarkably clean design. The geometric bodywork, with flat planes and strong edges, echoed Gandini's earlier Fiat X1/9 and demonstrated his fascination with bold architectural forms. Beneath the bodywork lay serious performance credentials. The Rainbow used the dry-sump Typo F106AB engine from the 308 GTB and GT4. This all-alloy, 90-degree V8 displaced just under 3 liters and featured dual overhead camshafts and 4 Weber downdraft carburetors. In this configuration, it produced approximately 255 horsepower at 7,700 revolutions per minute. Power was delivered to the rear wheels through a 5-speed manual gearbox and a limited slip differential, maintaining Ferrari's traditional focus on driving engagement. Performance figures reflected the car's sporting intent. In similar specification, the 3-liter V8 allowed a top speed in the region of 250 kilometers per hour. The transverse mid-engine layout contributed to balanced handling, while the relatively compact dimensions enhanced responsiveness. Although the Rainbow was fully functional and mechanically authentic, it was never intended for series production. Instead, it served as a design statement, an exploration of how Ferrari might look if interpreted entirely through Bertone's radical aesthetic philosophy. The interior matched the exterior's boldness. Initially finished in white with twin black coach lines along each flank, the car featured a cockpit trimmed in black leather with beige carpeting. The dashboard consisted of a body-colored flat panel housing the instruments and ventilation controls, while additional switches were positioned behind the gear lever on the center console. The seats had fixed backs and distinctive inserts, reinforcing the futuristic atmosphere. Every detail emphasized the concept's experimental and forward-looking character. The 308 GT Rainbow ultimately became the last collaboration between Ferrari and Bertone, as future projects returned to Pininfarina. After touring various exhibitions, the car was later repainted in a light metallic blue and preserved in the Bertone factory collection. Today, the Ferrari 308 GT Rainbow remains one of the most intriguing and often overlooked concepts in Ferrari's history. A bold reminder that even a marque rooted in tradition can, at times, embrace daring design experiments that challenge expectations and redefine possibility. Could a car built in 1970 in Argentina really look like a European Bertone concept, feature gull-wing doors, and reach nearly 230 kilometers per hour? The Buchucci Dogo SS2000 proved that it could. This aggressively styled Grand Tourer was the creation of a man who knew racing from the inside out. Clemmer Buchucci, a former driver from the early days of Formula One, he created in Buenos Aires a machine that was meant to launch a new era of Argentine motoring, an era of bold, fuori-serie projects built beyond the boundaries of major manufacturers. Born in 1920, Buchucci competed in world championship events against machines from Maserati, Ferrari, and Gordini. Although his Formula One career did not bring major success, he remained connected to automobiles for the rest of his life. In 1969, at his workshop in Monroe near Buenos Aires, he began work on his most ambitious road car project. Together with his brother Rolando and a small team of collaborators, he completed the car in just 5 months, following 2 intense weeks of brainstorming and design. The Dogo SS was a 2-seat coupe with a wedge-shaped profile clearly inspired by European trends, especially the Alfa Romeo Carrabbo designed by Bertone. The car measured 4 meters in length, 1.80 meters in width, and just 1 meter in height. Distinctive twin rectangular headlamps and a body-integrated bumper gave it an aggressive face. But the most spectacular feature was undoubtedly the upward opening doors, operated either manually or electrically, an absolute sensation in Argentina at the turn of the 1960s and 70s. The body was made of reinforced plastic, keeping weight down to around 700 kilograms. The structure was based on a single central beam frame shaped like an inverted Y. It featured independent suspension inspired by Porsche solutions. The wheels, designed by Buchucci himself, were made of magnesium, while modern disc brakes on all 4 wheels ensured effective stopping power. At the heart of the Dogo was a 2-liter, 4-cylinder engine producing 160 horsepower, sourced from the Peugeot 504 and mounted centrally behind the driver and passenger. It was paired with a 4-speed synchronized gearbox from the Porsche 911. Thanks to its low weight, the car reportedly reached a top speed of 228 kilometers per hour. There were even plans to install a Ford V8 producing around 410 horsepower, but that idea never progressed beyond the concept stage. The Dogo SS2000 was presented in 1970 at the Exposición del Confort Humano. The car generated enormous interest, with talk of more than a dozen potential orders. The cabin was sporty yet comfortable, and the styling modern and uncompromising. Despite the enthusiasm, the project never entered series production. Only a single example was built, becoming a symbol of the ambition and technical capability of Argentina at the time. Today, the sole surviving Buchucci Dogo is preserved in the Buchucci Family Museum in Zenon Pereira, in Santa Fe Province. Clemmer Buchucci remained devoted to his automotive passion until the end of his life, pursuing further projects, including faithful recreations of classic racing cars. Yet the Dogo remains his most striking creation, proof that vision, racing experience, and design courage can produce a car far ahead of its time, even far from the traditional centers of the automotive world. What do you do when you have a fortune, connections in Modena, and the firm belief that no existing car truly meets your expectations? You build your own. That is how the Momo Mirage was born, an Italian-American grand tourer created from ambition and passion by Peter Calico. It was meant to correct the shortcomings of contemporary luxury coupes and prove that a private visionary could rival the great manufacturers. Instead of a full production run, however, only a handful of cars were built, and the Mirage became a legend that disappeared from public view for decades. Peter Calico, a New York real estate developer and the descendant of Russian immigrants, built not only skyscrapers in Manhattan, but also one of the most remarkable private car collections in the United States. His friendship with Alfred Momo, owner of a Jaguar workshop in New York, opened the doors to Europe's automotive elite. Visits to Modena and conversations with leading engineers convinced him that the perfect four-seat grand tourer simply did not exist. If he could not buy it, he would create it from scratch. The project took 5 years to complete. In Modena, a chassis with independent suspension was developed, while the body was designed by Gene Garfinkel and built by the Italian coach builder Frua. Collaboration with Pininfarina was considered, but ultimately rejected due to cost. Power came from a 5.7-liter V8 supplied by General Motors. Output ranged from 300 horsepower in carbureted form to at least 330 horsepower with optional Lucas fuel injection. The two-door, four-seat coupe debuted in 1972 at the New York Auto Show. Measuring nearly 5 meters in length, the Mirage blended Italian elegance with American muscle. A 5-speed manual transmission was standard, although Alfred Momo insisted that American buyers would likely prefer an automatic. Top speed exceeded 250 kilometers per hour, and generous equipment included air conditioning and luxurious interior trim befitting a high-end grand tourer. Initial plans called for a production run of at least 25 cars, but reality intervened. Economic turmoil, labor strikes in Italy, and rapidly escalating costs undermined the venture. Investment reached roughly $500,000, and each car required substantial additional funding even before General Motors had been paid for its engines. Although around a dozen orders were reportedly placed, only a prototype and a few cars in varying stages of completion were produced. In the autumn of 1972, Calico decided to halt the project. For years, the completed cars remained hidden in Calico's private garage. Decades later, the dark red prototype re-emerged on the streets of New York, reminding the world of the forgotten experiment. The silver example appeared at the prestigious Concorso d'Eleganza Villa d'Este, where it was warmly received. Encouraged by this response, Calico later commissioned the completion of a third chassis, insisting that it be built exactly as it would have been in the early 1970s. Today, the Momo Mirage remains one of the most mysterious European-American hybrids ever created. It is still unclear whether 5 or 6 examples ultimately existed. What is certain is that it was a genuine, fast, and well-engineered grand tourer capable of competing with the best of its era. Although it never reached full production, the Mirage stands as proof that passion, determination, and personal vision can result in a car worthy of the world's finest Marquess. When others were building sports cars from steel and aluminum, he chose wood. The Cen Amigo was a bold engineering statement that proved aviation thinking could redefine the automobile. Capable of exceeding 220 kilometers per hour despite modest power, It was less a conventional coupe and more a road-going experiment. Conceived by a man who approached cars like aircraft, the Amigo blended aerodynamics, structural theory, and lightweight philosophy into one radical machine. It stood as a challenge to the industry's orthodoxy and a showcase of how far ingenuity could go when freed from convention. The man behind it was Frank Coston, born in 1920 in Middlesex, England. Before becoming an automotive innovator, he built his career in aviation during the Second World War, working for companies such as Supermarine and de Havilland. Aerodynamics was his natural language, and his experience as an airframe flight test engineer shaped his obsession with rigidity, airflow, and structural efficiency. When the British aviation industry declined in the late 1950s, Coston redirected his expertise toward motorsport, where science and speed met on four wheels instead of wings. In racing circles, he quickly earned recognition. He contributed to the success of the Van Wall Grand Prix car and worked on aerodynamic solutions for Lotus. Later, together with Jem Marsh, he co-founded Marcos, where he refined his ideas about wooden monocoque construction. While Marcos eventually moved toward more conventional engineering, Coston remained committed to his unconventional methods. Determined to build a road car entirely true to his philosophy, he set out to create the Amigo, his most sophisticated automotive vision. The Amigo was built around a wooden stressed skin monocoque formed from marine plywood and reinforced with piranha pine. Its structure relied on 6 torsion boxes, 3 running longitudinally and 3 transversely, bonded together by a fully enclosed stressed undertray. Even the seats were integral to the chassis, formed from curved plywood sheets and glued into the structure to enhance rigidity. Instead of adjusting the seat, the steering wheel and pedal assembly moved together along a track. Adhesives developed for aircraft construction, including aerolite resin, ensured strong, lightweight bonds throughout the chassis. Clothed in fiberglass, the Amigo's body was shaped with aerodynamic discipline. Its distinctive Coke bottle profile improved straight-line stability, and even the mirrors were tested in a wind tunnel. Air intakes integrated into the exterior door. Hinge covers fed ventilation into the cockpit, reflecting Coston's aviation mindset. Power came from a 2-liter, 4-cylinder Vauxhall engine producing 97 horsepower. Thanks to its ultra-light construction and slippery form, the car could surpass 220 kilometers per hour and accelerate to 100 kilometers per hour in about 7.5 seconds. Remarkable figures for such modest output. The Amigo was not only a road car, but also a capable racer. It competed in several lower-tier events in the United Kingdom and abroad, earning a number of class victories. Later examples were upgraded, with a more powerful 2.3-liter, 6-cylinder Vauxhall engine, featuring dry sump lubrication, paired with a 5-speed Getrag gearbox and a limited slip differential. Production took place in Little Stoughton, Bedfordshire, close to Vauxhall's facilities, reinforcing the practical link between Coston's radical chassis and reliable mass-produced mechanical components. Despite its technical brilliance, the Amigo struggled commercially. Its sparse interior and price of more than £3,300 limited its appeal. By 1972, only a handful had been built. Estimates range from 6 to 9 cars in total. Today, the Coston Amigo stands as one of the most unconventional British sports cars ever created, a testament to Frank Coston's unwavering belief that lightweight engineering and aerodynamic purity could triumph over tradition, even if the marketplace was not ready to follow. Imagine a luxury grand tourer inspired by an Italian Lamborghini, built on British Jaguar engineering and created by a wealthy real estate tycoon who believed he could conquer the automotive world. It sounds like the perfect recipe for success, yet the story of the Owen Sedanka turned out very differently. This unusual car was meant to become an exclusive alternative to the most prestigious grand tourers of its era, but instead, it faded into obscurity. Only a handful of examples were ever built, and the ambitious project ended far sooner than anyone expected. The man behind the project was British businessman Gerald Ronson, the owner of the London luxury dealership H.R. Owen. Ronson was deeply involved in the world of high-end automobiles and knew exactly what wealthy clients were looking for. During the early 1970s, he became particularly fond of the elegant four-seat Grand Tourer Lamborghini Espada. Inspired by its concept, he decided to create his own luxurious coupe designed to carry 4 passengers in comfort while offering impressive performance. The Sedanka project aimed to deliver a level of luxury rarely seen even among expensive grand touring cars. Ronson wanted the car to feel special in every possible way. The interior was designed with exclusivity in mind and featured unusual details intended to impress wealthy customers. One of the most curious examples was a hairbrush with a silver handle included as standard equipment, a small but telling symbol of the car's intended prestige. Technically, however, the car relied heavily on proven British engineering. The aluminum body was mounted on the chassis of the luxury sedan Jaguar XJ6. The bodywork itself was produced with the help of the respected coach-building company Williams & Pritchard, known for its expertise in lightweight aluminum construction. This approach allowed the project to move forward without the enormous costs of designing a completely new platform. Under the hood, the standard engine was Jaguar's well-known 4.2-liter inline-6, producing nearly 250 horsepower. The company also planned a more powerful variant, equipped with a 5.3-liter V12 engine delivering around 269 horsepower. With these engines, the Sedanka promised to combine strong performance with the smooth and refined driving characteristics expected from a luxury grand tourer. The name of the car was not chosen randomly. The term Sedanka had historical significance in British coach building, referring to luxury body styles created for prestigious marques such as Rolls-Royce and Bentley. These bodies were often built for vehicles sold through H.R. Owen in earlier decades, and Ronson wanted to revive that sense of heritage and exclusivity. When introduced, the Owen Sedanka carried a price of around £8,500, nearly twice the cost of the Jaguar XJ6 on which it was based. Despite the high price, the project initially attracted considerable attention, and around 80 orders were reportedly placed. Unfortunately, the global oil crisis of the 1970s dramatically reduced demand for large luxury cars, and the promising venture quickly collapsed. In the end, only one example was sold during the initial phase of the project. It was purchased by a buyer from Lebanon, who was so impressed with the car that he later ordered another. A third example was eventually built in the 1980s, this time at the facilities of Panther Westwinds. Today it is believed that only 2 examples of the Owen Sedanka have survived, making it one of the rarest and most obscure luxury coupes of its era. Imagine a Ferrari that looks more like an aerodynamic experiment than a traditional sports car. That is exactly what the Ferrari Studio CR25 was, an unusual prototype unveiled in the mid-1970s. Its silhouette was low, long, and filled with unusual details, designed with a single goal in mind: reducing aerodynamic drag as much as possible. The car was never intended for dealership showrooms. Instead, it served as a demonstration of the capabilities of an Italian design studio and proof that aerodynamics could become a key element in the future of high-performance automobiles. The story of the project began 2 years earlier, when Pininfarina opened one of the most advanced automotive wind tunnels in the world in 1972. The facility took nearly 6 years to build and allowed engineers to test full-scale vehicles, which at the time represented a major technological breakthrough. To showcase the potential of the new installation, the Italian studio decided to create a special concept car. The result was a futuristic coupe designed to demonstrate how the science of airflow could reshape automotive design. The body was designed by stylist Aldo Broverone. The car made its public debut in 1974 at the Turin Motor Show. Even the model's name referred to its most impressive feature: a drag coefficient of just 0.256. For the 1970s, this figure was extraordinary, particularly for a large four-seat coupe. Aerodynamics played a more important role than stylistic extravagance, although the car still looked strikingly futuristic. The shape of the car incorporated several innovative solutions. At the front, engineers installed an enlarged bumper integrated with a spoiler that directed airflow around the wheels. Special, almost solid wheels helped reduce turbulence around the wheel arches, while the rear section of the body was slightly raised to house an integrated wing that improved stability at high speed. The designers also introduced unusual aerodynamic air brakes hidden behind the second set of side windows, which opened during braking to increase drag and help slow the car down. In terms of size, the CR25 was a full-fledged grand touring machine. The car measured 4 meters 80 centimeters in length, nearly 2 meters in width, and only about 1 meter 10 centimeters in height. The wheelbase of 2 meters 70 centimeters suggested a close relationship with Ferrari models, such as the Ferrari 365 GT 4+2+2. Just like the production model, the interior provided seating for 4 adults, each with an individual seat and a very minimalist cabin layout. The full technical specification of the prototype was never officially disclosed. However, many observers believe the car could have been powered by an engine similar to those used in Ferrari road cars of the era. The most common assumption points to a naturally aspirated V12 engine, with a displacement of 4.4 liters, producing more than 340 horsepower. Some also speculated about a flat boxer engine, but the CR25 primarily served as an aerodynamic study rather than a fully developed production vehicle. Although the concept never reached series production, its influence turned out to be greater than expected. Several aerodynamic and stylistic ideas from the project later appeared in other Ferrari models, including the Ferrari Mondial. Today, the Studio CR25 remains a fascinating example of an era when designers began treating aerodynamics not only as a performance tool, but also as the foundation of modern sports car design. Looking at projects like the Dome Zero, Ferrari 308 GT Rainbow, or the Mazda RX500, it's hard not to ask the question, what would have happened if they had been given a real chance? Many of these machines lost the battle against the fuel crisis, lack of funding, or simply styling that was too bold for its time. And yet, they were the ones paving the way. The wedge shape, pop-up headlights, experiments with lightweight materials, and the Wankel engine, all of these later became part of automotive reality. Even though they never became sales icons, they were laboratories of the future. And maybe that's exactly why today they fascinate us more than many mass-produced supercars. The forgotten supercars of the 70s show that the automotive world isn't just about numbers and speed records. It's above all about dreams. Projects like the Marcos Mantis or the Cen Amigo prove that passion can create something truly unique, even if the world isn't ready for it yet. Today they are rare curiosities, prized by collectors and admired by true automotive enthusiasts. If you enjoy discovering stories like these, make sure to subscribe and let me know in the comments which of these cars deserves its own longer episode. Because in the garages of history, many more forgotten legends are still waiting to be discovered.